All right, so I've been working on this drawing for about 2 weeks now, and I was experimenting with something, right? I wasn't, you know how normally with my drawings, those of you who have been watching me for a while now, I use Q-tips when I'm shading and all that. But in this drawing, I was experimenting with using makeup brushes instead of the Q-tips, and I think I'm going to switch from the Q-tips to the paint brushes. So you can see I've done like about 30% of the drawing. So I'm going to be showing you guys videos, and I'll be explaining my way through some of the things I do and all that. It's really simple. It's just like what I do with my previous videos, just that instead of the Q-tips, we're going to be using the makeup brushes. All right. So those of you who are on the Patreon are going to get longer videos as usual. So I'm back on the Patreon, guys. I know I was off for a while, and because I was moving and all that, but I'm back now. So those of you who are on the Patreon are going to have longer videos and more in-depth videos where I explain like into further detail and stuff. And I'm going to have the reference image of this drawing over there as well, in case you guys want to draw and follow along with me. That was cool. All right, so let's jump to the DSLR, and then I'll work on just a little bit of the drawing, explain what I'm doing, and then so if you're watching on YouTube, you don't have the Patreon, you want to join the Patreon, it's $5 a month. Okay. And like I said, you get the reference image and you get longer videos as well. So but if you don't join the Patreon, that's fine as well. You're still going to learn from the YouTube videos. So yeah, let's just jump into the video. All right. All right, so now we're back on the drawing, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on a little bit of the drawing, like I said. All right, so just to show you guys how I shade with the makeup brush, like I said, instead of the Q-tip, because I'm sure most of you are used to the Q-tip method, right? So this is really simple actually. And I think it's far better. Like it's faster, and for some reason I think it's much more even. Like it's very smooth. So let me see. So I'm going to share this area, right? Then you guys can see this box, so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. So those of you who know me, have been watching me for a while, know I use Jacquard charcoal, and for the Jacquard charcoal, I make powder deposits from those charcoal, and that's what I use to shade, right? That I pick that with the Q-tip or the paintbrush, and then I use as shade. So those of you who don't know what the Jacquard charcoal is, it's a compressed charcoal that comes in a set of six different grades of charcoal sticks. So it's from white all the way to dark gray. All right. So I make powder deposits of each of the grades, so that way I have different shades of gray of charcoal to use on my drawing, if that makes sense. Okay. So right now, since I'm a dark skin, this is a self portrait. This is a dark skin, right? So I don't really need to use a light grade, right? Normally, I recommend you guys build up your tones light first, and then build up to the darker tone. Okay, but if you are experienced and you know what you're doing, you know what grade to use, and then you can kind of go in a little bit darker before you. Okay, so I have some charcoal down here. I'm gonna pick that up with my paintbrush. Now this isn't a paintbrush actually. This is a makeup brush that I got off Amazon. It came in a set. So you guys can just get any makeup brush. It's not like there's a specific brand. This doesn't even have a name on it, okay? So it's just a cheap makeup brush that I got, and it comes in different sizes. This is like a smaller one that I'm using. So this is what I do. I pick up some of the powder like that, and like this. I just go in a circular motion, and you can see it looks uneven at the beginning, but once you keep going over this, it starts to blend really well. Okay, and don't use too much pressure to the point where you are going too deep into the paper, where you're leaving like dark spots on the paper. Okay, just use a little bit of pressure, but not too much, so you can experiment with it on a separate sheet of paper before you sorry, before you actually go into like your actual drawing paper. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more because I need to get darker. Okay, so I keep going over it, and since I wanted to blend with the other um shading around it, you notice how I'm just going a little bit, picking up some of the charcoal from the top, and then just blending it. And I'll have to go darker with this, so don't worry about that. I'm just trying to make sure I have an even base before I add anything on top. So that's looking good. And those of you in the Patreon, you have the reference. You can see exactly what I'm doing. Like you can see exactly the spot I'm shading. Okay, so from the reference I'm looking at, I can see that there's a darker shadow right here that leads into the eye, right? So this is where I take another brush. So this is what I'm going to show you guys. This is a paintbrush. I'm sure you guys have seen me use this on my channel sometimes. This is an actual paintbrush. Now this is the makeup brush, and this is the paintbrush. Okay, the reason why I use the red brush, the paintbrush, for the darker areas is because this one has a harder bristle to it, so that means it can take charcoal and make it darker. I don't know if it makes sense, but you know, the harder the bristle of the brush, the more charcoal it can put into the paper. If the bristle is too soft, it's not going to be able to like hold all the charcoal onto the paper. I hope that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm explaining well, but hopefully I am. So I'm going to take some of the charcoal with the red brush, and for now I'm not using my black charcoal. I'm just using the same charcoal that I applied first, so we're not going to see much difference in terms of tonal value and stuff. I just want to get an even shading all around this area before I alright, so now what I can do is I can grab my black charcoal. Now this black charcoal, since the jacquard charcoal cannot go as dark as I want sometimes, I use my General's compressed soft charcoal sticks as a seventh grade to the jacquard charcoal. Remember earlier I said the jacquard charcoal comes in 6 grades, white to dark gray. Now I use, since I want a black grade, and the jacquard doesn't have a black grade, right? So I use the black compressed charcoal from the from General's, the soft General's compressed charcoal. I use that as a seventh grade. So I make powder deposits from that compressed charcoal as well, and then I use that for my darker areas. Okay, so now I need some black in here, right? You can see how the makeup brush isn't really doing anything, even though I'm picking up some black charcoal. You can't really see a difference like that, you know. And that's the problem. That's what I was talking about. That's where the red brush comes in. Okay, so I'm going to pick up the red brush, pick up some of the black charcoal, and then hopefully you guys can see the difference now. Now with this one, I'm actually applying a little bit more pressure because I know the bristle is hard, so I need a so hopefully you guys can see the difference. Yeah, so hopefully you guys can see the difference now, and look at how much darker the red brush is able to go, you know, compared to the so look, as I'm shading, I'm looking at my reference just to make sure I'm doing the right thing, shading in the right area, and so because we don't want to mess up, right? This is charcoal we're dealing with. We don't want to make any major mistake where we have to do some major corrections. So I can see there's some shadows leading around here. So it's kind of like you're painting, right? It's really fun working with the brushes instead of the Q-tip. So I can tell you for a fact that this entire drawing I've barely used the Q-tip. I think I only use a Q-tip for a little bit of like some dark spots that I wanted on the drawing, but I haven't used the Q-tip at all, like in terms of shading or anything. Okay, so now I need to go a little bit darker, so this is where my charcoal pencil comes in. Okay, so I'm going to grab my soft charcoal pencil, and this is a general charcoal pencil that I'm using as well. This is the 3B. This is the 3B Primal charcoal pencil that comes in the general charcoal set. They have like, I think, a 32 charcoal set or something, and it has the primal pencils in there. But I think if you can't find that, I think you can order the primal pencils separately. Okay, so remember the name is General's Primal Charcoal, and this is the 3B. This is the softest one that they have. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently, I'm not applying any pressure because I don't leave like lines in this area. We're going to blend everything, so just apply some charcoal in there loosely, you know. You can tell I'm not putting pressure by where I am holding it. Look at where my hand is. I'm not holding it right here. If I was holding it right here, I have to put pressure, right? But my hand is all the way back here, so I don't have too much control over the pencil. And then just in the area that I want it, not too much, because we don't want to go too dark. We still want to see some detail in there. So now back to my red brush and my black charcoal. Pick up some of the charcoal with the brush and go over this again. So we get what we want. So it's just back and forth, you know. This, you don't have to rush any of this, okay? You just have to keep doing this till you actually get the skin tones that and the tonal values that you want. If you have to go put as many layers as you have to, then just do it, you know. And that's how. So already you can see how really nice the tonal values and everything are, right? I haven't added any details in this area yet. I always tell you guys, don't focus on the details, focus on the tonal values. That's what's going to make your drawing look realistic. Okay, so I'm just going to keep on making sure I have the right tonal values and everything before we add some detail, and that will be it for this video. And then, so this is just an introduction video to this drawing, so it's going to be a shorter video. Now this video is going to be available for all of you guys on either Patreon or YouTube, right? This is going to be in the Patreon as well, but the Patreon guys are going to have the reference. But moving forward, I'm going to make the Patreon videos longer, but for now, for this video, you guys are going to have the same video. Okay, but the Patreon guys are gonna have the reference, like I said. So I think the tonal values here are okay. Let me compare with my reference. You guys who have the reference can compare as well. See if I'm doing a good job or not. I think I should go a little bit darker. So now, this pencil that I'm using is Conte A Paris Pierre Noir 2B pencil. It's much darker than the general charcoal pencil I was using. So this is what I use for my blackest blacks. That's what I use for the eyelash on the eye. That's what I use for the eyebrows, and like any really dark areas you see in the drawings. That's what I use, because most of the time the charcoal pencil cannot go really dark. It lightens up after you blend everything, but with this pencil, it can stay dark like even after you blend and everything. So I don't apply too much pressure because I don't go too dark. I know this pencil is a really dark pencil, so just tap the shade, like just brush the pencil across the areas you want. And I think I should add a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to blend this again with my red brush. Guys, this brush doesn't have a brand as well, so it's just a cheap paintbrush I picked up from a local art store, and this brush was actually longer than this. One thing I did was I took a pair of scissors and I cut off the tips. So that's one way you can make your bristles much harder, right? Because the shorter the bristles, the harder it is. I don't know the science terms of it, but I'm sure you guys understand, right? So if you have a longer brush, you can definitely get a pair of scissors and then cut it down a little bit and then see if that works for you. Just experiment with your tools and your materials on a separate sheet of paper and just play around with stuff. Take some things from what I'm doing, apply them to yours. Mix them up, and that's how we improve. You might come up with your own techniques, and you don't have to exactly do what it's like what I do. If you want to do that, that's fine, but you can also be, if you want to add your creative elements to it, that's fine as well. I'm just happy to help you guys and show you guys what I'm doing, give you guys updates. So if you guys have any questions, just leave them in the comment section. Now I'm trying to focus more on the Patreon and the YouTube now, okay? Because the past few months I was in the process of moving and everything, so I was really unstable. I couldn't be consistent with it, but now I'm trying to be really consistent with it. So I appreciate those of you who have still had the patience for me and are still here. Hopefully you guys can keep supporting me so we can grow this community of ours, okay? So now it's time for the part you guys were all waiting for, the details, right? Now you can see I've already added some details here. Let me see if I can zoom in on my camera so you guys can see the details exactly. And I think I'll have to bring the camera a little bit down, right? So hold on. Okay. Alright, so now you guys can see, right? So you guys can see I've already put in some details right here. Now this is what we just did, this area, right? This area is what we just did. So I'm going to, if you're looking at the reference, you can see the little dots and stuff like what we have here, right? We're going to replicate the same thing around here, and this is really simple. This is a pencil eraser I'm using. This is from Faber-Castell. You can use a kneaded eraser. You don't have to use a pencil eraser. You can use a kneaded eraser as well. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to tap like this. I don't want to get it too white. Just little bits, little dots with your pencil. So going back, comparing with the reference, seeing where it doesn't have to be exactly where it's placed in the reference. It's your artwork, so just play around with it. And you can see there's a little bit of white right here, and then a little bit of like fold in the skin, if you'd call it that. So you can see how simple this is, right? It's not too complicated, just little white dots that I'm making. And then looking at the reference, compare. Okay, come back. Okay, now let me do it with the kneaded eraser. So in case you guys don't have the pencil eraser, you can see it with the kneaded eraser as well. So same principles. Just tapping some of the charcoal away. Okay, so go in there with the kneaded eraser and then tap some of the charcoal away. Tap, tap. Okay, see that? Okay, now I can see there's a little bit of highlight in the shadow as well. The shadow right here. So I'm going to put that in. And there's a little bit of highlights right here. Like this. Just brush. I don't make it too much. If I make it too much, I can always go back and tone it down with my paintbrush. But I'm trying as much as possible to keep it as subtle as possible, and like that. Okay, so now it's time to add the shadows. That's gonna make it look like actual pimples or rashes or whatever you call those things. This is the fun part of the drawing, the detailing. So this is, now for those of you who don't know, this pencil I'm using is the Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils. Okay, this is a warm gray 5, I think. So it comes in 6 grades: warm gray 1 to warm gray 6, just like the Jacquard charcoal. Okay, so this is what I use for my detailing. I don't use graphite pencils, you guys know that. So now remember, this side the shadows were coming on the left side, but since we're getting to the right side, now the shadows are going to be on the opposite side. This is just a little flick. It's like you're drawing little C's in the opposite direction, like a C, like the letter C, but in the opposite direction. And if you need a darker pencil, you can always grab the warm gray 6, which is darker. So this is a dark skin, so I'm gonna need the darker pencil right here, like this. Okay, so I don't want to overdo it and make it look like too much, so that is okay. I think I need to tone this a little bit down, this highlight right here. Just tap on my paintbrush or makeup brush, and I think this looks good. Alright, so there we have it. Like, that'll be it for this video. And you guys can see, let me zoom back out so you guys can see how it looks like so far. Alright, so you can see how simple that was, right? Now this is me talking throughout working. If I was working by myself, I'll be I'll be much faster. It's been like 20 minutes doing just that section, and it's cause I was talking a bit. But if I was doing it by myself, this would probably take me about, I don't know, 10-15 minutes maybe. I'm not sure, but it's much quicker than using the Q-tips, I think. So hopefully you guys like this video, and I'll be bringing more, um if not day by day, every like other day. Okay, so watch out for the Patreon. Those of you who want to join the Patreon, I'm coming back on the Patreon full time, so um yeah, I'll drop the reference in the tier 2 for the Patreon as well. And I think I'm just going to delete the tier 1. Okay, so yeah, thanks for watching the video, and hopefully you guys enjoy this. Hope you guys learned something from it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.